Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet Sky FF, the world where everything revolves around £50,000. My name's Suj.
My name is James, although I don't
We,
think it revolves around it till next season for us.
we will, you never know, a lot can happen. Sky Fantasy Football has obviously reopened, as well as FPL and the weekly show that James and I put together talking about Sky Fantasy Football and our journey on this game is back.
Yeah, if you've come for the FPL stuff, see you tomorrow. Now's your time to leave.
Yes.
We are talking, as we will be every Wednesday going on to at least the end of the season, and obviously for next season, talking about Sky Fantasy Football. Suj, how awkward was it going back and looking at your Sky team?
It was not that awkward, I'll be honest with you.
No?
I'll tell you why, for a few reasons that have helped. So I think I like the fact that Sky didn't give us a new overhaul. I wanted to go back to it the way it was. I also knew, based on the way that the fixtures are going to be spread, like how many match days do we have? I know there's 92 games. There must be, 35 different match days, give or take, between, maybe something like that. Let's say 30 or 35 match days.
Probably more.
For people who have used a lot of transfers, that was going to be carnage. And I knew that I had 16 transfers left, which is plenty. And also the last reason, once I looked into my team, if you'll remember, when we had the split game week at the start of, was it February, when we had the 5 teams on one weekend, 5 teams on another,
right, yeah.
Which was directly after the first overhaul. I set my team up because I had a lot of transfers for that first weekend. And then I was going to make a number of transfers for the second weekend. It was Man City Arsenal, wasn't it? We got pushed. And so I bought quite a few City players for that match that then didn't take place. And I was left with a bunch of City players that I couldn't do anything with. Opening my squad now, James, I come back to, in a double game week, Henderson, Baldock, Otamendi, Mahrez, Grealish, Aguero.
Nice. You've had a right result.
All playing this week. Exactly. And in amongst that, I've got Van Dijk, Richarlison, Bruno Fernandes, and then a few that... Okay, so Ricardo Pereira is still in my squad, but he's obviously injured.
Do you want me to tell
Troy
you
Deeney.
the mass list of we say double game week players. Let's say the players playing on the first day back. Do you want me to go through the mass list of players I've got?
Sky is not one big game week. It's a game week with 2 matches, and then it's a second game week.
Yes.
So that little game week there.
So I've got loads playing on that Wednesday night. I've had a right touch. I've got Henderson, De Bruyne.
And
silence is golden.
Oh.
That's me. That's all I've got.
And it's not one of those.
Oh, actually, I lied. Sorry, it's not even De Bruyne. It's Otamendi. I know I'm buying that guy from Belgium.
It is one of those. Look, Riyad Mahrez and Otamendi are not locked in, but I'm hoping that Otamendi starts and Mahrez gets some minutes. This is not a situation where if you don't have players in those 4 fixtures, you potentially might want to just steam into them.
Yeah, there's merits in attacking all 4 of those teams that are playing first. Arsenal, because obviously, yes, they start with that, and then it's Brighton on the Saturday straight after. So, for example, you can get 2 Arsenal fixtures before Liverpool play again, for example, right? And then Arsenal's fixture run actually further on, Southampton, Norwich. There are potential captaincy days there, particularly for, say, Aubameyang. City rather speaks for itself. Starting with Arsenal, then you've got Burnley on a single game day, right? Then there's a decision to make in terms of the Chelsea and Liverpool fixtures, if you come off or not. Sheffield United's defensively no sound. Start with 2 good fixtures, Villa and Newcastle. Again, Sheffield United play twice before, say, Man City, or a comparative price. One I want to talk about is Burnley. So Sheffield United play twice before Burnley. And Villa, obviously, the interesting one about Villa is Villa play 4 times in the first 11 match days, which there are some comparable teams who actually only play twice in that period, for example. So Spurs, for example.
Man United.
Before Spurs play their 3rd game, when we come back, Villa have played 4. So actually, there's scope to be looking at all of these teams. And I won't be wasting any time on this. I've got 14 transfers. I've got a plan, certainly for the first 10 days or so, where I'm pretty confident that I know what I'm doing. But before we go into that and sort of questions, what's your rank, Suj? Do you know?
It was about 10,000 before we finished, so well out of anything interesting whatsoever.
And you've got 16 transfers and are in a good position in terms of your current squad.
Oh, my
Oh, no.
rank is 19,982.
Okay, just at 9,000 out. Cool. But you're in a very good position, mate.
With the transfers, potentially, yeah.
I've got a good number of transfers. I've got 14 left.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in a position to get myself out of what essentially is a bad spot, is where I've landed. You know, I've got people like Fred sitting in the squad.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go and attack it quite quickly on this. I do have the transfers. So I am 1,224 is my rank. So
top 100 could be realistic for you.
Probably a push, but that would be amazing. Target pre-season, not knowing what we were doing when we started, would have been top thousands. I mean, I'd have said top 10,000 at the start, but I didn't have a clue, right? When people were saying, yeah, like top 100 is a good finish and stuff. So, yeah, it's still possible. I'd be pretty pleased with top 500 from here, I think.
Top 500 would be good.
For first season's okay, yeah.
Yeah, if I can get into the top couple of thousand, I'd be happy. And I think that's realistic. I think, put it this way, if you're talking about apathy of players coming back and not managing their teams, Sky is going to suffer from that way more than FPL is going to suffer from that. I think with FPL, you're almost starting afresh each and every game week. Whereas here, if you spunk through your transfers and you've got 4 or 5 left, then you may as well hang up and not make any transfers and let the likes of James and I overtake you.
Yeah. Do you know transfer-wise kind of what you're thinking? Or is it a case that you've landed quite nicely, see how that first night goes?
No, so yeah, I'm going to see how that first night goes. I can't see myself making particularly any transfers. The one I've got an issue on the Saturday, the 20th.
Yeah,
I don't have anyone that I can potentially captain at the moment, other than Troy Deeney at Watford.
That's interesting. When there's 8 fixtures that day, is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't have any Leicester coverage. Well, I would have had Ricardo Pereira, but he's injured. I don't have any Wolves coverage. I don't have any Arsenal coverage, Palace, Brighton, West Ham, Watford, Bournemouth, none of it. However, that week, that game, I may move from Aguero to Aubameyang, because I like the Brighton, Southampton, Norwich run for Aubameyang more than I like Burnley, Chelsea, Liverpool for Aguero. So that may be the way I go on that Saturday, is go from Aguero to Aubameyang and then captain Aubameyang in that fixture.
There's no immediate gains on fixtures on that, although I guess behind the scenes, because of
They're
rotation at City,
though, right?
Yes, they are better fixtures, certainly, because City's third and fourth fixtures of Chelsea and Liverpool, they are definitely better fixtures between 2 and 4, let's say, of the restarted fixtures. And rotation with Aguero.
Captaincy coverage as well. The Brighton game and the Southampton game on that Thursday night, Man City are playing Chelsea. So that looks like the standout potential captain there.
Yeah, I'm kind of forced into moves immediately. Is there anyone? I'll tell you what I'd like to cover quickly. Is there anyone you've gone back to your squad and gone, I have no idea why they're there?
Deeney, but not anybody else. Just Troy Deeney. I think I'm going to go from Ricardo Pereira to the Doctor.
You got Pereira as well.
Yeah, he's injured. So I'll go to Doherty from there. I'm going to leave Troy Deeney for this first round of games and then decide what I'm going to do with him thereafter. I've got 9.3 million for a striker to replace Troy Deeney. So I'm not sure who I'll look at, but there are options at that price point.
Interesting.
Danny Ings, Tammy Abraham, even Pookie potentially is available at that price.
Yeah, they've got decent runs of fixtures, actually. So you mentioned those two have got, certainly Southampton have got one single game day, haven't they, at least?
Yeah. So it's only really Pookie and Pereira and Deeney that I need to get rid of and move on.
Doherty, just to mention briefly, I think that's a decent shout, actually. Serge, he's going to be a differential. He's going to be about 5% owned. And I think those who want to target into Wolves will look higher up the pitch originally. But you are right. Those enforced by the Pereira issue, who he's probably going to struggle to make the start next season. Are forced into a move, and as am I. I've got Pereira as well. So that's for example, that's an immediate. Don't wait. Let's make a transfer. Let's get it done opening night. Take advantage of the opening fixtures. From the perspective of Leicester being the last game that was as well, it's kind of worked out. There's a few others in there. I'm like, how's this happened? Fred, which with the run Manchester United have got.
You had that one game that you wanted the captaincy coverage, which is why you went with Fred.
I know why he was
doing
there.
Okay on the bonus points. He was doing okay as well.
Yes, he was. It's important to once you've looked at this and gone, I don't know why they're there, understand why they were there. So yes, Fred covered me off okay, and actually was a couple of times he was really close off of passing to you and stuff like that. But obviously with them now, with Pogba potentially back, McTominay back fit as well, that's not a lock-in anymore. So I think that needs to be an early escape route for me. Otamendi, I'm looking at, I'm going, how have I got there? I'm remembering, obviously, Laporte got injured against Real Madrid, didn't he?
Yep.
So Otamendi kind of looked like a bit of a lock. I think Stones had fitness issues as well. So Otamendi looked like he was going to be a lock in those United, Arsenal and Burnley fixtures. So I think my plan with Otamendi now is I'll leave it there for the first night. There's no point throwing it out, but I won't even wait for the Burnley game. I'll get him out and then attack others afterwards. Those are the main ones. Richarlison's another one who I'd ended up captaining the last Sunday, the fixture against Chelsea, because I didn't have Manchester United coverage other than Fred. And obviously, I think we'd all caught wind that De Bruyne wasn't going to play, didn't we? And he'd been hanging around for me from the second overhaul when I'd captained him quite successfully against Palace, etc. But now the way the fixtures have turned, I want to get rid, because one of the things with Richarlison was I had left him in there, A, because he was performing quite well, and B, the Norwich fixture, which is Everton's second fixture back, did at one stage look like it was going to be the best captaincy option in the blank game week on the Saturday before the lockdown. Then obviously Norwich beat Spurs in the Cup, so there was no need for him anyway. So he's another one I'm now quite happy to get rid of as well. Everton have Liverpool and Chelsea, is it? Liverpool and Everton, Liverpool and Leicester in their first three back. So yeah, good time to jump off as well. Allows me value elsewhere.
The frustrating thing here is that we've only got a few weeks worth of fixtures, so we can't even do any slightly longer term planning. We're planning, I know this is really spread out, but in theory it's only 3 match days plus the double game week at the start. So if they can release some fixture news before the games kick off, that would be kind of sort of helpful. I know the Premier League don't like to help us necessarily, but if they can release some more fixture news, that would be helpful.
Yeah, and that's why I've only got a plan at the moment to sort of fix the squad up and get me coverage for what I know. I don't think there's, at the moment, really kind of looking at only the first 2 fixtures, because you don't really know what's going to happen with the 4th set in terms of time spacing. There are certain things we can know from the 4th set of fixtures, where there's a number of teams that won't play on Saturday, July the 4th, because there's 2 games on the Thursday night. So the games involving City, Liverpool, Tottenham and Sheffield United in the 4th game week won't take place on the Saturday. So from a captaincy perspective on that Saturday, it would look at the moment like you were looking at probably Manchester United. I would have thought against Watford, perhaps. Sorry, against Bournemouth. Sorry. That would probably be the one, but then it doesn't mean that Manchester United can't still get moved back to the Sunday or the Monday or something, right? There's only certain ones we know that won't be on that Saturday. There won't be a game on Friday, July the 3rd. I've gone through all the 20 teams and worked out that at least one of them who would play on the 4th in their scheduled fixtures play 3 days earlier on the Wednesday. So there's none of them will get brought forward till Friday, July the 3rd. So that's an interesting note to make. So you won't have to worry about that as a single game week fixture. But I need to rearrange now to get myself in a stronger position, certainly for, at the moment, we can only play what we do know, right?
Exactly that. Should we get into some of these Twitter questions, James? Because quite a lot of them answer some of the things that we're going to end up talking about, as we do always anyway. And it's the C word, James, that's coming up quite a bit.
Can we talk about that now?
Captaincy. Well, if people listen to the podcast after 10 p.m., then we can say what we like, right?
We have never said
this.
this. We have never said the C word on a podcast.
No. Sol Campbell. I just said it. There you go. Campbell. FPL
takes off headset and leaves.
FPL Cobbler at Cobbler FPL. What do I do with only 5 transfers left? It's difficult. I tell you what, though, because there's a question a bit later on as well from Nigel Bennett, and let's chuck the two together, and I'll tell you why. And he says, "Are there any decent 3-for-1s, etc., coming up?" Now, because of the way that there's no double game weeks and blank game weeks, and everybody plays within a certain period of time, I don't think you're gonna get 3-for-1s that often. You might get 2-for-1s, but 3-for-1s between now and the end of the season are going to become much rarer. So you almost have to go towards playing this a little bit more like regular FPL, where you're planning slightly longer term because you're not going to be able to jump on, jump off. And that's, I guess, what FPL Cobbler is going to have to do.
Yeah. I'll give you a great one that does work. We'll come back onto Cobblers, but I'll give you a great one that does work, which is why I wanted to mention, is Sheffield United to Burnley.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly if you're a Dean Henderson owner. Dean Henderson has around about 60% ownership currently in the top 1,000. Really highly owned. Now, assuming, and it's not been confirmed as yet, but we think it will be, that Manchester United allow him to stay on loan with Sheffield United for the rest of the season. We think part of that might be an announcement of a new contract at Manchester United, by the way. You got Sheffield United first night against Villa, great fixture. Then on Sunday the 21st, they play Newcastle. Now then Burnley come into the single game day the following night against Manchester City. Now, I'm not suggesting that you make that move and then ignore Man City and captain Nick Pope. No, I'm not. But it is the entry point. And the reason it's the entry point is because obviously Sheffield United's following game, which is before Burnley play Watford, is against Manchester United. You've got Dean Henderson will be ineligible. So you've got Villa, Newcastle, and then you've got 3 fixtures of Pope: City, Watford and Palace. Watford and Palace sound all right. And Palace obviously covers that awful Monday the 29th fixture as well, when Palace and Burnley play each other, before Sheffield United then play Tottenham. You might decide that you don't want to go back, because Burnley's fixtures aren't that bad. They do have to play Liverpool as well. But other than that, Burnley's fixtures are okay. And I think particularly if you've got a double up of Sheffield United, that looks a blindingly obvious move to me, where if you look deep enough, you can make gains. There are other things that will obviously come up where you want to target teams who have certain bad fixtures. So if you take Man City, for example, you might want to go Arsenal and Burnley and then move from, say, if you've got coverage already for Tottenham Man United on the Friday night, or you've got Norwich or Southampton, you might want to come straight off that, and then you've got United against Sheffield United, Brighton and Bournemouth, while Man City play Chelsea and Liverpool in the same period. So it's going to be a lot more in terms of targeting the fixtures a little bit. And I think for those who've got small numbers left, like FPL Cobbler, who've got 5, as long as you're covered on the main guys, which I would say right now would be, in the first instance, Manchester City, and then a period where I really think you're going to need some Manchester United personally, and you will want a Liverpool player at least, no matter what, to carry you through. As long as you've got the coverage, I'd say, from those 3 main sides in the first instance, I would wait and see how this plays out. Because we're all guessing at the moment. Until we've got a couple of games, we've got nothing to go on. You could make a transfer now and they might not even be locked. For example, Bruno Fernandes is a great player to go and target. No argument about it. It's someone that I'll almost definitely be getting. But we don't know the impact of Pogba on him. And when you've got to be that precise with transfers at the moment, I'd probably wait. But you've got to have something, I think, of City, United, Liverpool somewhere. And the other one I'd advise early on, which I think you probably kind of half covered there with Doherty, is some sort of Wolves. Because Wolves have a good run of fixtures: West Ham, Bournemouth, Villa. 3 sides all fighting the drop at the moment. Now, with Wolves, that can go either way. And importantly for Wolves, they have the single game day against Villa on Saturday the 27th, which then again for Wolves becomes a good exit point. If you don't have to exit. For me, I've got Jimenez and Traore. So I don't really want Traore there. Jimenez, I'll decide once I get to that Villa game. But it's likely for me that following that Saturday the 27th, I'll come off. And interestingly, for a lot of people, if you're in that position where you've got, say, Jimenez and Traore, you're then following it with 2 single game days, which are horrible. Watford and Southampton and Palace and Burnley. Now, if you don't go that Henderson Pope route, you could, for example, look at Jimenez to Wood, for example, if he's back fit, and Traore to Ismail Assar would also seem very straightforward. So it's really important, I think, to know at the moment what your entry points are, and more importantly, your exit points. And for those with the low transfers, you've got to tread very, very carefully. You've got to be certain on any transfer you make.
Agreed with you there. You've just answered Mark Dorney's question as well, which was...
Sorry, Mark.
3 teams you must have captaincy options for. As James mentioned, Liverpool, City, United. But then Wolves gives you an interesting option there as well. And Burnley do have that single game day. But I think what James has said there in terms of Liverpool, Manchester United and Manchester City definitely are ones to consider. Dan Cox, former winner of Sky Fantasy Football, has asked us a question. Can Suj remember his login details? Yes, just about, but yes. He also says, are you pleased that we don't need to have any West Ham players now? Before the lockdown,
great
it was looking like West Ham were needed for 2 single game days, but now we don't. But don't forget their fixtures do turn around. What in Sky, I think, is now game week 47 or something like that.
The one positive of this terrible pandemic is that it happened before I bought any West Ham players. Absolutely. I'd be gutted. If it had been 1 week later, I could have had at least a couple of them in there, because it was Wolves. Then it was Chelsea with the single game day. Tottenham on the Friday night. Mm-hmm. Then it was Chelsea on the Sunday, which looked quite awkward. And then it was Newcastle on the Friday night. And now I'm not interested in any of them fixtures. So
yeah, it's not until the 4th of July. So West Ham start with Wolves, Tottenham, Chelsea. You're not looking at them for any of those potential fixtures. But you never know as we creep towards the end of the season if there's something potentially to play for.
They're the sort of side to keep an eye on if suddenly they do end up with a couple of single game days, which we've got no way of knowing. But with them being involved in that, yes, there's a chance that Newcastle and another could end up on a single game day, for example, and get a bit of coverage. But we really don't know how that's going to play out, do we? So
he's also asking about captaincy coverage for the first 2 weeks. But let's look at the next week and the first weekend. James, who are you captaining on the double game week day?
Well, I'm intending to make 3 transfers to start with, which is to sell Pereira, which is a must, sell Richarlison, and I'm also looking to sell Salah, as I've got TAA and VVD. I think that's okay for now. I need to spread it a little bit more. So I would be targeting straight away De Bruyne, Grealish, and Aubameyang.
Any of those to captain?
I would captain De Bruyne. That's the thinking at the moment. Then on the Friday night, I'd be ditching Otamendi then, and I'd have enough to go to Fernandes, which I think Fernandes is important. Get Fernandes.
He's already in my squad, so he's my captain on that Friday. Yeah.
Get Fernandes on the Friday night for United at Spurs. On the Saturday, I'd have a couple of options. So I'd have Aubameyang against Brighton or Jimenez against West Ham. There's obviously other options there as well, but those would be the 2 I'd favour.
Aubameyang for me on that day.
Sunday the 21st, I'd probably go VVD against Everton of what's available, I think. Mm-hmm. On the Monday, then it's City Burnley. So at the moment, I'd be KDB again, but it might be one where because we'll know the team. If Aguero's playing, I might just in and out, just do it, captain in and out. On the 23rd, I'd currently have coverage in Siyunku. The 24th, I'd have VVD again against Palace.
Yep.
Thursday the 25th, Aubameyang against they've got Southampton, isn't it? It's probably my best option. Saturday the 27th is just Villa and Wolves. We've got Jimenez, that's fine. Sunday the 28th, at the moment, I'd be looking at Ismail Sarr, who I'd actually be looking to get in on the day that Watford start against Leicester. That's a point for me, I think, to come off of Fred. Keep Fred for the Tottenham game the night before, then straight down to Ismaila Sarr. Gives me money in the bank again, which is quite handy. What we got after that, then that's the Crystal Palace Burnley, where I'd be looking to have Nick Pope in on the night that Burnley play Man City. Get that set and ready. Brighton and Man United, Fernandes again, Tuesday the 30th. Wednesday the 1st, probably Aubameyang against Norwich. Thursday the 2nd, probably KDB against Liverpool as it would stand. Although it could be a very good entry point actually into Tottenham, because Tottenham have a massive gap between West Ham on the 23rd, a full 9-day gap till they play Sheffield United on July the 2nd. So it could then be that Spurs have a real condensed period of fixtures, which we don't know yet. But it could be that Sheffield United fixture is potentially a good entry point for Tottenham.
Speaking of Spurs, James, it would be as if people might have thought you were segueing to me and we were telepathically thinking. Sam at Sam Sky Sports FF says, bit of chatter that Spurs players may be worth a punt, but who should we pick? And Tim Barry says, is Kane worth a gamble and would you captain him against Manchester United?
It's obviously absolutely fine to go down that route and captain Kane or Son if you want to go that way. I just feel personally that the priority really should be Manchester United over Tottenham if you've got none. And I think if you've got a decent United coverage, which I guess at the moment, considering the injuries that would be would probably be Fernandes or Martial. Yeah, people aren't going to be sitting there with Pogba or Rashford yet. But I think if you've got Fernandes or Martial, or even if you had, say, Maguire, I think it's okay to cover off the captaincy there. That night as well, Norwich play Southampton. So for those who are perhaps still sitting on Danny Ings, just go Danny Ings.
Yeah.
So I think it's a watch on. I would definitely prioritise Manchester United over Spurs, partly as well because of that big gap that I've mentioned between Spurs' fixtures against West Ham and United. It's the biggest gap of any team on the fixtures that we know so far. So the flip of that is, yes, okay, you could possibly take advantage of Manchester United and West Ham and then come off Spurs. But the entry points, you're probably looking at Manchester United would be the entry point. I think if you're coming off Tottenham on that day, it's probably looking at United, because other entry points for other teams is probably earlier.
I just don't trust, Jose Mourinho likes to beat his former sides, but he'll do it through frustration. So I think he could sit in deep and nick a 1-0 would be his style against Manchester United. He's going to want to get one over on Manchester United.
Can I be honest with you? I wouldn't be surprised if Tottenham and Manchester United is the highest scoring game in the opening week.
Well,
I feel completely different about that.
I think it's just going to be people sitting in. I think especially because I don't think
Mourinho knows how to counter people anymore.
No, that I don't disagree with, but I think he will want to. We definitely want to get one over on. Over on
we know United's strengths as well will be counter-attack. If there's an early goal in that game, it could be fire. Really could be like a 3-2 or something. If there's not an early goal, it might become quite cat and mouse, and then go down that route, like you said, which is quite. Obviously, we don't know if there's going to be an early goal or not. I suspect if there is an early goal, it will be very, very open. If there's not, yes, it could become quite cagey. But I think with United, like with Pogba back and that, how much can they sit in, really? I think you might begin to see a slightly different Manchester United now.
James Bailey at James Bailey 777 says best Ricardo replacements. I'm assuming obviously Ricardo Pereira. I'm going to Matt Doherty, who's the same price as Pereira. 8.5 million. Pereira's 8.5 million as well.
I think that's a very decent shot if you have no Wolves coverage. As I said, you get them 3 good fixtures, and then there's an easy escape straight off those 3 fixtures to perhaps even cover you then into something on the single game days. For myself, who's currently got a back 5, I've got a 5-3-2 currently, it's the right time for me to move away from that back 5. So I would, for those who've got 3 defenders, obviously you need to look at defender, but I think there'll be plenty out there who might sort of have double Liverpool, double Leicester, for example, are now thinking, okay, I've still got that cover of Siyunku maybe. where you're actually looking into the midfield forward areas. I think, Wolves is a very good target. Very good target. Otherwise, I think you might even be waiting on sort of Ismail Assar level, perhaps, maybe.
We talked about the 4 for 2 or whatever you can get out of Aston Villa, maybe Grealish, if you don't already own him. At 7.9 million is also not a bad shout. If you need a defender, maybe Wan-Bissaka, who's only 0.1 more expensive at 8.6 than 8.5. If budget is an issue, that might be one to consider going to as well.
If you look at it from the budget perspective of me opening night looking to sell Salah, Richarlison and Pereira for Aubameyang, De Bruyne, Grealish, essentially the transfer there for me is Pereira to Grealish.
Correct. Leon H94, I don't think we can answer this, James, but we'll try. Any guesses as to when the next fixtures are going to be announced? It's difficult to plan the moves because of the captaincy coverage.
Not close.
We're not going to get them this week, though.
It could be today. I have no idea. They're still in talks, aren't they? The one thing is, unlike in the real season with fans, etc., the only people that need to be notified are the police, right? In terms of the plan of the fixture. Now, we've had announcement today, for example, that Everton and Liverpool is definitely going to take place at Goodison Park, and so it should, by the way. But we knew that there were contingency plans where the police were prepared for either decision, be it a game in Liverpool or a game in the Midlands or something. The police were ready and informed of whatever happened under either operation. They were okay with it. So as long as the police, it's actually about what notification the police need, right? And the further we go into coming out of lockdown, the less notice that police need, really, in terms of their preparation, etc. So look, there's a chance that we'll start next week and we won't know anything more. I don't think that will be the case, but it's possible because for players at the moment, they don't
matter.
Nah, the week's notice. When we always moan about the notice on rearranged fixtures, we always moan about it from the fan perspective, travelling, etc. Doesn't matter for a player in his profession.
No,
so now
exactly.
It's just about police and that making sure you've got an ambulance crew available.
Exactly.
So there's no guarantee we'll get more anytime soon. Having said that, we'll timestamp this. It's about 1:30 on Wednesday as the fixtures come out.
And I mean, teams will be preparing and training for the next fixture. They're not often going to be doing 3 or 4 fixtures out's worth of training. So you work in the week for the fixture that's next up. And they'll have at least a week's notice between these fixtures. So I think that should be fine. Last couple of questions, James, which are interlinked. Tim Barry again says, are you prioritising captain coverage for each game day or team fixtures? And Ed FTBL, is it better to spread your team out to try and cover most or all of the captaincy days, or still go for multiple players in the same team like we did before, i.e. the Liverpool defence, for example?
Yeah, I think spreading is now a good idea.
This is much more where the number of transfers you have to play with becomes a bit more telling on your strategy. For the likes of James and I, with so many transfers, we can afford to make a couple extra to give us that coverage. If I had 10 transfers or less, I think I'd be looking to make fewer moves because you're going to inevitably get injuries, right? And you're going to need to move off players for that. So you want to hold back 3 or 4 transfers just for that alone. So then I would be making much fewer transfers and spreading myself thin. With what we have, we can dive in and dive out of specific games a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think
definitely spread it.
Good examples would be, let's say you're sitting there on TAA and VVD at the moment and Salah, say, for example, like I am. I think now is probably the right time, actually, almost irrespective of where you're at in terms of transfers, is to be looking at spreading that somewhere, be it perhaps you don't have a Manchester United asset like Fernandes, or you're sitting there like me, like an idiot, only on Otamendi. You need something Man City. So you're going to spread that sort of thing. And at the lower ranges, say, for example, you are sitting there like with Traore and Jimenez, for example, then I think you're going to sit through those 3 good fixtures to Wolves, and then knowing that the next day, depending on what you want to sell, there's very good jump-offs to Ismail Assar or Danny Ings, for example, to get you the coverage on that captaincy day. and then you've got to run with that, whichever one you go for. So I think I'd be more inclined in that case to go with, say, Sarr, because you're not held down by the value of Danny Ings, for example. And Sarr at a cheaper value than, say, Ings, okay, fine, I'll just leave him there. Almost forget that he's there. And if I need him for a captaincy coverage, it's a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a case of doing that. The flip is, you're saying you got no Wolves at the moment, right?
Nothing.
So like Pereira to Doherty is ideal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an issue with that. Depends again on what I think. If you've got a back three, and Pereira's one of them, I think Pereira to Doherty is a very good choice. If you've got more, I think, looking at some of the others that are playing, Grealish, or even something further afield with Wolves like Jimenez, or that would be a big jump up in value. Depends what you got. I'm sitting there with like 2 million at the bank at the moment.
I'm not. That we talked about Pereira replacements. Another player, while we talk about Wolves, that might be a good jump off would be Jota. He's only 8.3 million as a midfielder in this game, so he might be one that you want to consider if you fancy a little bit more Wolves.
Yes, good. I think Jota is one though. If you've got more sort of the number of transfers we've got, it's a decent one to consider. For me, sitting there with Jimenez and Traore already, I don't really want Traore anymore, but I'm not slamming any more on that. That's absolutely fine. And I think, yes, as we get into this, if you're sitting there currently with how many City players you've got?
3.
It's fine. But then following that Burnley fixture, I'd say you need to come off something straight away.
Yeah, I will be. I'll probably be coming off a little bit before, to be honest with you.
I'd probably hold the Burnley fixture. There's a nice gap between the Arsenal and the Burnley fixtures. Nice gap. The only problem with City is then it's 3 days to Chelsea, 3 days to FA Cup game, and then Liverpool 4 days after that.
Indeed. There we go, James. That was all of the questions that we had from our friends on Twitter. Anything else to add?
I think we should start making this podcast 2 hours.
Well,
it's not long enough.
We can, as soon as the rest of the fixtures are announced, because we'll have a little bit more to talk about. And actually planning for Sky is a little bit easier right now than planning for FPL.
Is it?
This free hit bench boost dilemma is tossing a lot of people's heads.
I'm going to tell you truthfully, now that I know the strategy that I'm doing with FPL, etc., I'm so in the Sky headspace now. Whereas until last night, I hadn't been at all. But now I know what I'm doing with FPL. I've always said that, don't I? Once I know what I'm doing with FPL, I really can get myself in the Sky headspace now. And I am.
Good. Excellent to hear. Thank you for tuning in to Sky Fantasy Football. I hope you've missed it as much as we have. We still have some great content for you coming out this week. We have Clash of the Correspondents tomorrow with our Manchester City correspondent, Johnny Pringle, and our Arsenal correspondent, Adam Pritchard at 350. So definitely worth listening to those guys talking about their clubs and their fixture next week, as well as a live stream from James on Friday, Ask James, running through all of the permutations, combinations, and any other head scratchers that you may want to ask him. Alongside Champman FPL returns tonight and on Saturday, so we've got live streams for those as well.
And for the Sky guys who might have not listened to us for 3 months, our patrons now open, Suj.
Yes, it is indeed. And thank you for the people that have joined Patreon. Well over 100 people now in our Patreon Slack channel community. And it's just growing bigger and bigger day by day. So if you head over to patreon.com/planetfpl, you'll be able to find out more. We've got some cash prize leagues and some awards and rewards and all that kind of stuff.
There are some very, very good Sky players in that Slack channel now. There is a dedicated page for Sky in there.
Fantastic. So do head over to that. And also don't forget, if you haven't already voted in the Football Content Awards, James and I are up for Best Fantasy Football Podcast. You can see the link in our bio on Twitter. You can follow James at Planet FPL Pod, and you'll be able to vote for us there. All of those votes would be very, very much appreciated. We need as many as we can possibly get.
Yes, please. As we're one of the few out there doing dedicated podcasts on 2 fantasy football games, and the voting for that, even though the awards aren't till November, the voting for that closes on Thursday the 18th. So please don't think twice about it if you want to give us kind of a thumbs up. The link to the vote is in the bio of the podcast.
Correct. Other than that, just needs you to say, stay safe, guys. Wash your hands. Ciao for now.
Good luck, everybody. Be nice to each other. Cue music, man child.